back everyone, it's Gina from Orchid and Opal.com, and I'm back today with another storage video in the series that I'm doing to share with you guys a different aspect of my beading and jewelry making supplies and trying to split them up in different videos. Like I've said before, everybody needs to find a system that works best for them, and I'm by no means saying that this is the way that you should organize your beads, because we all have different needs and we have different supplies and so many other factors that goes into it. I've already covered in previous videos how I store my findings, my seed beads, and also my crystal beads and stones. And now I'm going to be talking about how I store my Czech glass beads, both the single and the multi-hole. I'll be giving you an up-close look at all of these beads in just a moment, but I wanted to give you an overview of the wall storage system that I have in place from afar, kind of a bird's eye view look at everything, and seeing the shelves next to each other as well as the beads that are hanging below. So I'll get into those too. What you're looking at here is a system that I've actually shared in the past. I started this system a couple years ago, and it just started with one acrylic shelf. And now, as you can see, it's expanded to 5 acrylic shelves. I still have some room to spare, as you can see on the first 2, and that's done on purpose. But because the Czech beads are something that I really enjoy working with, they're more expensive than basic beads like, say, Chinese crystals and seed beads, things that I know what they look like, what shape they are. And that's what I shared before. Those are more stored in my drawers in the beading storage units, which are my rolling carts that are sitting below this wall system. But I'm a very visual person, so I find it's really helpful for me to have those pricier and more interesting Czech glass beads on display, and I always know what I have. I can come into my beading area and these beads are not getting lost, they're not stored away where I've forgotten about them, and it helps me to know what I have at a glance because there's just so many different shapes of Czech glass, especially the ones that I get and the multi-hole beads. And if I had them in all different places or stored away where I didn't see them on a regular basis, it would definitely be easy for me to forget what I have, and I'd probably waste money and time looking for things and also repurchasing things that I already had. So this system has been amazing. It's probably my favorite aspect of my bead storage overall because not only is it very easy to organize and maintain, but it's so much fun to look at. It's inspiring to me to see all these fun beads on the wall, kind of like a little mosaic work of art or something on their own. They're very colorful and they don't take up any additional floor space. So I know for all of you, it's not possible to have things like this on your wall, or maybe you don't have the wall space that would work for something like this. But if you do, I highly recommend it. This is one of those systems where, again, I recommend starting small just to see what ends up working for you before you make any big investments. But then if it does and you find that you're really enjoying it, it's easy to keep up with, you can grow and expand over time. As usual, I'm going to leave the links to all the products that I'll be featuring today on this video below the video in the description section. I'll also have a linked blog post with all the information as well. But again, use what you have around you first, use what works for you. But if you are curious or would like to try any of these systems that I'm using, I'll be sure to leave links to where you can find these particular items. A couple other things to mention about these shelving units. They're actually not very expensive. You can find them on Amazon and they are advertised to store nail polish. But even though they're advertised that way, they work perfectly for those little flip-top clear plastic containers that I've already highlighted in a couple of videos so far. And I use those flip-top containers constantly, the ones that are very clear and very secure. I've even had situations where I have fumbled and dropped a container of these beads a time or two off of the wall as I'm collecting things from it. They've fallen on the floor, and I'm not even talking about carpeted floor, I'm talking about laminate, and the tops have not popped off. So another good thing about those flip-top containers, but also you can stack them. So these shelves, each row is, I believe, around 3.5 inches or so tall. So if you get 2 1.5-inch containers, you can actually stack those on top of each other, and you can store smaller quantities of beads that way and pack a whole lot onto just one of these rows even. So to be exact, each of these rows of each of the acrylic wall shelves will hold 37 containers across. And as you can see, there are 6 rows per shelf, and that adds up to 222 flip top containers that can fit on one acrylic wall shelf, and that isn't even double stacked. So if you were to get all, say, 1.5-inch height flip top containers, you could actually store 444 different containers of beads on one acrylic wall shelf. The other thing is, this is completely interchangeable. So as you use beads from one container, you just take that container away. You can add new containers of beads as they come in. Say you get a different shape, you can just move some of the other ones down and fit the new ones in. It makes it easy, especially for somebody like me who always has beads coming in and out. I send a lot of beads out monthly to my patrons. I've done a video on that before. And some of you who aren't aware of that have said things like, I can't believe you don't have even more than what you have. You know, you're showing these videos and I keep thinking that you're gonna have so much more on hand. But the truth is, I do get a lot of beads in monthly, but I also send a lot of beads out. And that helps me because I don't like to be drowning in too many supplies at one time. And also the patron support helps me and my business a little bit to keep doing what I do. So it's a win-win situation for them and for me, and also plays into my organization. All right, I brought you all in closer so we can take a look at everything that's on these shelves. And I'm gonna start one row at a time at the top right-hand corner of my rightmost acrylic wall shelf. So as you can see on the top right, I have my 4-hole quadrilentals, followed by the 4-hole quadra tiles, those little squares. Then as we move over, I have some Moby duos stacked up there, and notice how I have stacked a lot of these. And also I try my best to not fill up, say, like a 3-inch tall container with only a few beads, because that wastes space. So I try to use the smallest container that I can depending on what I have. Here are some stacks of Nibbit beads, followed by some Super Cheops and some Cheops, Parpuka, the triangles, and then some 2-hole Czech glass triangles on the end of this row. So this entire acrylic shelf is dedicated to my multi-hole Czech glass beads, as is pretty much all of the next shelf that we'll take a look at. So that was the very top row of the first one. Next up, on the second row down, I have my 2-hole Checkmates crescent beads. Then there are some Amos Parpukas and some drop duos. And what else? I have some Iris duos, some of those little SO beads that look like little owl faces. I have my Storm duos, and then a number of Paisley duos and Zoli duos to finish up that row. And as you can see, I have my shapes stacked together, usually a little bit of space in between the different shapes, but it's really easy for me to move them around and accommodate different quantities and different colors as I get them in. Third row down, I have my 2-hole like dome beads, the candy beads, the 2-hole cabochon like beads. Those are all right there on that end. And you can see some more candy beads there, some of that little semicircle Parpuka shape. And then moving over, we get into some of these honeycomb beads. I have my Helios Parpuka beads starting there with that beautiful purple. And you can see, since I had a lot of those, I just stuck those in a taller container. I also have my ginkgo beads all the way to the end of that row. And then as far as knowing what these are, it would be the similar labeling system that I showed you before, where I use the colorful dots, which indicate to me a particular place or bead subscription box that those came in. And also I could be a lot more specific and list the name of the color or the color number or anything else that would be relevant. Those are things to think about when you're storing your beads. What information do you want to make sure you know? Maybe you want to know how much the beads cost and that sort of thing. And that's what you can add onto your label and put them on a side of the container. So you just have to determine what you need to know, what kind of information you're going to want to know once you pull these beads out and start playing with them. Moving down to the fourth shelf, I have some of these chevron shaped beads and the Avas. I also have some of the Vexolo, those wedge shaped ones. There are also some round duos from Potomac Beads. We're coming up to the Samos Parpucas. And then some Tinos, and then that shelf ends with those 2-hole sunflower shaped beads that I've had for so long and are in one of my very first tutorials. And then we start on the 5th row down, and you can see some of those 2-hole metallic beads from Potomac. I also have some Arcos Parpuca. There are some of the Trinity and Infinity beads. And then some various other shapes, some semicircle, some tangos, some of the little 2-hole shelly shells, the little 2-hole pyramid beads, and then my 2-hole lentils. And then some of the pentagon shaped pego beads and another bead shape at the end by Puka. The name is escaping me at the moment, but another pretty full shelf of 2-hole beads on the 5th row down. And then on the 6th row down, that last row of the first shelf, is another collection of multi-hole beads. This one has some more 2-hole shapes, but also is starting to house some of the 3- and 4-hole beads down below. I've tried to put some of those together, like the bridge beads and the 3-hole beams, as well as the Cali beads that we're starting to see over there on the left. And so on, even more 3-hole beads over there, and ending with the round trios. So I've tried to put the 3-hole bead shapes together, the 2-hole bead shapes together, that sort of thing. But overall, this is just, it's so easy to see everything that I have and what colors I have. And when I want to work with something new, I can easily get inspiration by just looking at the wall. And then starting off at the very bottom shelf of the next acrylic shelf, I have some wide duos down there at the bottom right. And then as we move over, there are some of these 2-hole Checkmates diamonds. And then we have some of the little 2-hole Rula beads. So you can see that this shelf is continuing on with the 2-hole beads. So there's some, I think those are kite beads from what I can see. And then my mini duos down here at the bottom. All the way on the left is beginning my super duos, which continue on the shelf above that, which start with some of the silver and grays and then go into the black. And then we have the reds, orangey colors, and on into greens and blue, purple, and pink, all the way on that side. So those are all of my super duos together on that shelf. And then if we go up another shelf, you can see the silky beads, kind of like the tile beads, but they're on an angle. And then we get into my collection of tilas, starting with the original shape, the half tilas, the quarter tilas, all stacked up there. There's moving on to the quarter tilas. And then all of the 2-hole check glass tile beads that I have. So those are kind of similar shapes, the squares, kind of put those together. Moving on to the shelf above that, I have some extra space, and then we get into my diamond duos and gem duos. Those are pretty similar, so I keep those near each other. So another note about that, some of these multi-hole check glass shapes are interchangeable. So if that's the case, sometimes I will try to put those types of shapes together. That way, if I'm looking for a certain color or shape, it also reminds me, oh wait, I could also maybe use this or that as a substitution. So that is the 4th shelf up on the second rack. And then fifth shelf up, we start out with some of those little gecko beads. So here's where I'm bringing in some of the one-hole check glass shapes that I have multiple quantities of, but are irregular in shape. So things like the geckos that are over there on the left. Again, I left space for additional things that will be coming in, I'm sure. Then some of these little one-hole triangles and squares, the one beads, the O beads, the wheel beads, the Minos parpukas, the tubelets from Potomac. Moving on to the little teacups and the one-hole check glass prong beads on the end of that shelf. So all things like that that are one hole but just kind of irregular in shape, that's what's on that shelf. And then if we hop up to the very top shelf, you can see that I have some of these little faceted check glass rondelles, little disc-shaped beads. Those up there at the top, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on the name. They're like those little pinched barrel-shaped one-hole beads. And then the dragon scales. And then the ones up there that are similar to pinch beads. And various shapes of little cubes. And then ending up with some of these check glass cabochon beads, which are like the fire polish, but have a flat base. Then on shelf number 3, this is where I start my collection of check glass flowers and leaves. So at the very top, you can see I have my check glass Hawaiian flowers in those containers, and I have room to spare up above that. Moving on down, I have some of these larger check glass flowers in the taller containers because I needed extra space for those. Then the little forget-me-nots next to that. And other similar shapes and additional shapes and colors of flowers on that second row. And then moving down to the third row from the top, you can see I have some more leaves starting on the right. Just tried to put these similar shapes together, and there are so many different types of shapes of check glass leaves and flowers. And I've just put together what I have, as you can see, and tried to put those similar ones next to each other. Some little bell flowers, and then ending with those cute little 5-petal flowers there on the left. Then on the next row down, continuing with even more leaf shapes put together by shape. And then we start to get into some of the check glass drop beads. So I've put those together by shape as well, and have started all of the drop-like shapes, like faceted drops, no matter what size. Some of them are a little bit shorter or longer, wider or thinner, and they're all together on my acrylic shelving. So you can see how I've just put those shapes together. So if I'm looking for a particular size, I can see what colors I have at a glance for all of those drop-type shape beads. And then on the next row down, I have things like my mini daggers, which are all the way on the right, and then get into the magatamas. They're in those beautiful Picasso type finishes. So still kind of those beads that drop and different petals. These are all the little Czech rose petal beads and all those beautiful colors. And then these standard size daggers over here. And then on the very left-hand side, I have some of the lily petal shaped beads. And then finally on the very bottom of this shelf, I have my pit beads all the way on the left. And then we move over and I have some of the one-hole lentil beads. Also some of those check glass flat teardrops. And then some of the little Rizzos. There's some pinch beads that were not on a strand that I have in the containers. Some of the tip beads from Potomac, some faceted drops, and finally ending up with some of those little button beads there on the end. So as you can see, I still have lots of room for the check glass shapes, especially on the last shelving unit that I'm going to show you. And I have reserved this shelving unit to house my check glass shapes that are one hole. In particular, especially the ones that don't come on a strand. I get a lot of those types of beads in subscription boxes, and where I definitely don't have like a whole bunch of that one particular shape. So with those, I've stored them together by color because I figured if they're kind of irregular like that, I may not be putting them in a specific bead weaving tutorial like I would a multi-hole shape or say a pip bead or something that I have a lot of the same shape of. And this is where those end up just sorted by color. So I have a lot of those glass beads in black and then gray, and then I get into like clear and white. And you can see I really don't have a lot of these beads because I send so many out on a monthly basis. And I used to have a really full shelf of all of these types of things, but I ended up depleting them quite a bit, and now I'm kind of building them back up. So just moving on here and showing you how they are sorted by color, and I have plenty of room to add more of these types of beads as I get more of them coming in future boxes as time goes on. So there's ending up with some red ones, and that is it, except for that little container of pink. And I still have a couple of empty shelves up above that, and that's everything that we just took a look at and how I organize all of those types of things. And then the other thing that I get a lot of are the Czech glass fire polish strands. So that's actually what you see on these hooks below the shelves. One of the main reasons I like hanging these up is because a lot of times they already come pre-strung and they have a loop, so it's really easy to hang them up. And even though I know what they look like and I don't have to have them in front of me visually, it just makes sense for me to store them right below the acrylic shelves because it's not taking up any additional floor space or drawer space or anything. And as you can see, I have a lot of them sorted by size and then color. So I have my largest ones on the right, like the 8mm, then 7 and 6 and 5. And then you can see I have a lot of the 4 and 3mm size hung up here, especially because I get a lot of those from the dollar bead box and other subscriptions. And they are kind of sorted by color as well as the 3mm and just 2 little rows of 2mm to end the fire polish. Then finally, for what I have hanging up all the way on the end, I have pinch beads. Those are also pre-strung. And then the Czech glass Lucerna bicones. I also have a hanging shelf of some glass rondelles. I could take those off of their strings and put them in the little flip top containers. I just haven't done that yet. Another hanging grouping of various shapes like owl beads and some drops and some of the Czech tulips. Then a hanger of melon beads and some of my Czech glass drux and pearls in the sizes that are separated, like 4mm, 6mm, and 8mm. So kind of a no-brainer storage for me to have that going on underneath the acrylic shelf because I had the space, and also these little command hooks are not supposed to damage the wall. You can just pull down on that sticky tab and you're supposed to be able to remove them without removing the paint along with them. We'll get into some of these things above. Those are gemstone beads, and that's one aspect of my gemstone bead storage, but I do have some more to share on that, and that'll be coming up in a different video. And I have one final little thing I want to show you with regards to my Czech glass storage. All right, so finally, you know how you have a strand of fire polish, let's say, and it's nice and neat on the strand, but then you only need, say, half the beads for a project you're making, and you end up with beads left over that are no longer on a strand. Since I have so many of those particular sizes and shape, I've decided to also use the Potomac Beads Best Bead Boxes as some recycled storage for those types of things. And I have these boxes labeled so I know what size is in which. This one is the 4mm, and I can lift that up and you can see that I have started to put the additional 4mm that I have that are not on strands in some of these flip top containers as well. These particular flip tops are ones that I don't want to use on my wall shelf because they're ones that I bought thinking they were the type or brand that I liked, but they weren't. These don't have as sturdy of a top or lid, so they end up working better in boxes like this, and I have them, so I might as well use them. So that's my start of this type of storage. And I also have a similar box for the 3mm. You can see I haven't yet put these into flip top containers, but at least for now they're bagged up and they're all in the same box so that they're not floating around everywhere. Something else I've started doing is sometimes making my own little color mixes of these beads to make a particular color stretch a little bit further. If I only have, say, a part of strand of this and a part of strand of that, I can maybe sometimes mix them together and use in projects as a mix. It just depends. So at least they're contained in one of these boxes, and this is just another way I like to reuse these really sturdy Potomac beads boxes. So again, use what you have on hand first if you can, because sometimes you can repurpose things and not even have to go out and buy a whole new storage system. Here's the 2mm. I don't think I have very many of those. Yeah, so those are just bagged up as well once they've come off their little strands or the strands have broken and they are inside of those. And I could get a lot more specific with my labeling. And again, label where everything came from, the cost, the color name. I'm slowly but surely working on my labeling, but I also know exactly where I can find out the specifics of what I have, because I can look back on, say, video footage or blog posts or lots of other things if I really have to and I can't remember or can't find it when I'm trying to look it up. Besides that, I guess I'll just show you my little random box of beads. This is not all Czech glass, it's just a smattering of everything. This is my little bead soup container, so that if I have like one bead left that's not even enough to bag up, it wouldn't even make sense, I will start putting them in this container. And a lot of times if I need a bead to embellish an extender chain, say on a necklace, or maybe I want a couple beads to go next to a clasp on a bracelet, I will dig through here, and I'm always surprised by what I can find, even if it's just one or two little beads that I need, and that way they don't go to waste. So that concludes my Czech glass single and multi-hole storage. I hope this segment was helpful for you, and even if you don't use this exact method, maybe it sparked an idea for you for your own bead storage. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. Leave us a comment. I want to be able to have this series of videos not just be from what I'm sharing, but also what you all want to share with each other, because we can all learn a lot of useful tips and tricks for storing our beads, because there are so many different methods, and different methods are going to speak to different people. So if you have a great method that you like to use, please feel free to share that down below. It could help somebody else too. It could help me. Like I said, I'll be leaving the links to all the products I featured on this video down below in the description section, so you can check that out and check out the blog post for more. I'm so glad to have you joining me, and if you enjoyed this video, I'd really love it if you'd give it a big thumbs up. That would mean so much to me. And please subscribe while you're here so you'll be notified when I'm posting more beading content. There are other parts of my storage that I haven't gone over yet that I'm going to be covering in future videos, so stay tuned for that. And feel free to follow me on my social media handles that I have listed down below as well. I'd love to have you on those sites where I share fun pictures and things. And if you haven't yet already, definitely check out the other videos I've already completed in this storage series to find out even more about how I store my beads. Try to find a method that works for you, for what you have to store, for your space, your budget, all of those different things. And don't be afraid to change your storage system if something isn't working. I've definitely had to go through several different methods to find what works for me. And I'm finally able to share these aspects of my storage because I've used them over time, and I can definitely recommend them at this point. Well, I'll be back again real soon. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, happy beading.